Hello everyone, thank you so much for being here today. I'm Travis. I'm really excited to be your host for this special session, which is part of the Multicultural Grassroots Initiative, Social and Intercultural Connections Project. This initiative is supported by the Australian Government. It's all about celebrating the power of diverse communities, bringing people together through storytelling, mentoring and connection. And today we'll do just that. We're very lucky to be joined by Dr. Emran Amin, who has such an inspiring story. Originally from Bangladesh, Dr. Amin has built a meaningful life here in Australia, not just through his academic and professional work, but also through his commitment to helping others. Like many in our culturally and linguistically diverse communities, his journey has had its ups and downs. And today we'll get a glimpse into what it really feels like to start fresh in a new country and how to build a sense of belonging along the way. Why these conversations matter? Well, when we share these stories about the first few years about setting into life here, navigating unfamiliar systems and finding support, it helps us all understand each other a little bit better. And these are the conversations that build bridges between cultures. Before we begin, just a reminder, this event is part of the Multicultural Grassroots Initiative grants, which supports people from all walks of life to connect and thrive in Australia. Welcome, Dr. Amin. And could you just share a little bit about your journey from Bangladesh to Australia, what brought you here, and how has the transition been?
Thanks, Travis. It's a great opportunity for me to talk in this forum. First of all, I pay my respect to the elders and the past of this land. If I think back about my journey, it has been long. Then I think I came to Australia in 2010, which is about 15 years back, and I came here as a student, like most of and a number of migrants too from overseas come as a student. So I came as a student. After finishing my engineering degree back in Bangladesh, I came here as a postgraduate student. I did my PhD in engineering from Monash University. So that was my transition. And after I finished my studies, I stayed a few years, not years, a few months, I would say, in the USA. However, I moved back to Australia, and then just stayed here, and I can say I resettled myself in Australia. So that's very, in short, my journey in Australia.
Okay, so when you think back to your first few years in Australia, what emotions or experiences stand out the most?
Look, it's a mixed emotion, and I would like to talk about not only my emotion, and I can see this emotion and the experiences for, I would say, sort of any or most students coming to Australia. That is the experience when they come in Australia. There is definitely a sense of hope, a sense of excitement that they're coming to a new country, one of the first world countries, leading countries for education and good living. So there's definitely a sense of and excitement. At the same time, many Australian or students who come to Australia to study, they have a sense of, how can I say, not a fear, but a sense of uncertainty, because there has been always an issue about what to do when we finish our studies. What I mean is, in Australia, for any student to come, as if I share my own experience, when I joined here, came here in the first year of my studies, it was okay, everything was going good. But soon I could realize that most of the people around me, like who were students, they were like talking about, oh, what we're gonna do after we finish our studies, what's gonna happen of our visa, should we get a work visa or should we get a permanent residency visa, and those sort of talks. Initially, I wasn't aware, but soon after I could find that this is a major concern within that community. Why? Because Australia, what I found, does not have a very streamlined process of what would happen when someone finishes their studies. And it's not very well known. The information is not very clear to students. So there is sometimes anxiety, there is a fear that what's next. Particularly, definitely there are students who finish their studies and they go back home or they go overseas. That's one flock of students. However, if any student wants to at least do some work experience and then I wouldn't say settle, but stay for longer time, the rules and immigration and the visa has, what I have seen over time, and starting from my experience as well, has changed dramatically. So this poses an issue, and there's a concern. And if I talk about students who is coming currently, like I do a lot of community work and volunteer work with migrants and refugees, as well as students communities who is coming in Australia now. I can see it's still there. This concern is still there. So I think that was one of the biggest concern which that community has for the first 2 to 3 years of their stay in Australia. Yeah.
Well, what about some of the challenges? What are some of the unexpected cultural differences or surprises you faced when you moved?
Yeah, that's a very good question about the cultural differences. I talked about the administration and the visa issues, which may be common in other countries. Culturally, if I talk about myself, I come from Bangladesh and fairly conservative and very Sunni Muslim community. What I mean is, like, the Muslim community in Bangladesh is very streamlined, I would say. It's not much of a diversity. So coming to Australia, there's two sort of, I wouldn't say cultural shock, but surprises what I found. Number one is, in a Western country, what happens, you don't only have, you definitely have Muslims as minority, as well as Bangladeshis as minority. And so you have the minority Bangladeshis and minority Muslims in Australia. So you get used to, or you get immersed in other culture, if it's white culture and other communities, from European communities, African communities. So it's very diverse. So that's, I wouldn't say a shock. I found it very interesting, because I like meeting new people, new cultures, and I like to know what other people do, think, how they live, and those sort of things. So that was a good experience. But at the same time, another interesting experience, which I wouldn't say again a shock, but it's a new experience for me, is because I come from Bangladesh, which is a very conservative Sunni Muslim country. When I moved here, definitely I found other communities or other Muslim communities. What I also found within the Muslim communities, which is there is a lot of diversity, which is very interesting. You would think that we share more or less the same culture, because that's how I was brought. But when I came here, I found within the Muslim communities, there is Arab communities, there are African communities, European communities, and there's Asian communities. They are different. They are Muslims, but they're different. So that was a bit of an interesting bit as well, which I want to expand a bit more. Yeah.
So does that lead you to ever feel like you're in between cultures and a little bit unsure where you fit in?
Yeah, that's. Look, I think because my root coming from a certain culture, which is Bangladeshi culture, and a particular coming from a particular religion, I was brought up in a certain way. My The way I was brought up and the way I had my communities and social life coming to Australia, it's different. I definitely try to find some threads of commonalities, which I developed through creating a network of common people, common culture in Australia after many years, and I try to embody, I would say, bits of pieces of my baggage of culture which I brought with myself, and assimilated culture where I live. Um, so that's where I'm currently now. However, the sense of where I belong, I think that's a journey which any, I would say, first generation migrant will have. That, because we come from like our my at least for myself, about 25 to 27 years was in a different country. When I come back, I have already been some sort of matured a male person, so I have those roots still within me. I still keep connections. However, I try to take this as a reality that I would be living in a society and a culture which is more diverse and a bit different than others. And I would want to add, I was listening to and an article, a radio show about Greek cultures in Australia. So Greek population came to Australia more than 90 to 100 years ago. Roughly some of the Greek communities, mostly coming in 1930 to 1950s. So now they are third to fourth generation. But those communities, those third to fourth generation communities, still looking for their roots, which is very interesting. You would imagine that after third or fourth generation, people wouldn't be really soul searching or root searching. But what I'm trying to get there is, I being the first generation migrant, definitely have more roots to cling to. However, after three or four generation, people still search for their roots. They want to know where I'm from. So that's a journey, or that's a question, or that's a why will be there. Yeah.
So some of those challenges that you faced at the start, did you end up turning them into a positive learning experience?
Absolutely. That's what I wanted to go about the particular discussion I just did about being a Muslim, coming from a very streamlined Muslim conservative society. Coming here in Australia, I found Islam being practiced a bit differently, and because most, if I talk a bit about the diversity and the demography of Muslims in Australia, Muslims are about 4 to 5%, and of the overall population in Australia. However, they come from various countries like all over Asia, Middle East, Africa, then Europe and USA. So it's just so diverse. What essentially happens, people coming from different parts of the world, yes, they are Muslims, but they have different ways of practicing the religion. Their core belief is the same. However, because they are brought up with their same religion in different culture, so that cultural aspects comes into that religion. Yeah, so within the same religion there is diversity. So that was very interesting. So initially, that's what I found when I came here. I was looking for only Bangladeshi Muslim communities because I could cling with them, I could click with them, yeah. But and I could see there are sometimes maybe misalignment within the Muslim communities. So that was a bit of an experience for myself and a bit of a shock, I would say. However, over time, as I've been living in Australia, I could clearly see that within the diversities, one thing and the differences, I would say sometimes, so one thing stands out and one thing keeps them tied together is that, they're part of the same, they call it the ummah, or the same community or the same religion. Yeah. So that in the long run stands out, and you can start appreciating the differences. Yeah. So you can start appreciating differences of the food they eat, the way they sometimes do their rituals. There might be slight differences, but that's not a major thing. And we start recognizing, appreciating, and respecting each other. So I think was very interesting for me as I kept exploring myself within the different multicultural Muslim communities in Australia. I found it very fascinating. So that's one of the things I like being in Australia now is the multiculturalism within this religion. Yeah.
Okay. Well, was there anyone or was it something that helped you feel more connected and supported in the new environment?
Yes, absolutely. So what if I give some particular examples where I currently live in a certain suburb, southeast suburb in Melbourne, in Victoria, there is a community, and there is a community hub which is called the Pillar of Guidance Center. I want to talk a bit about this community hub, because this is a community hub. The whole essence when they were created, it was they didn't want to make it like a community hub where it's based on one nationalism or one ethnicity. Rather, it's very multicultural. So that particular ethos, the particular idea itself was very appreciated by me. Like I really like that idea, because most of the community hubs, the Islamic community hubs, were very nationalistic and ethnic. So as I met the particular brothers who were the main founders and the very close communities, I started providing time and do volunteering and creating a community around that center. And that's my main community center where I spend a lot of time with my family as well and friends. What I found that this has helped me to grow. So what I think important for me is try to find out people and communities and networks who speaks the same language, have the same values, and where you can connect yourself. So that really happened with this particular community, and I would say a community center, and a few brothers who kind of helped me to go along with them, and they speak my I'd say language in terms of the way I see the world and multiculturalism in Australia. So I think that was a very good help from that community. Yeah.
So how have your past experiences, whether teaching or community work, helped you adapt here in Australia?
So I think if you just recap what I just said, what I always tend to have as an academician as well as a researcher and I would say an open thinker in a nutshell is, if you have a broad mindset, first of all, it's very important to have a broad mindset that whatever comes especially in life, and when you're coming to a new country, in a new society and a very diverse country, a broad mindset to accept difference and accept diversity is very, very important. I have seen people and communities who try to be within themselves, within very restrictive. I'm not saying recidivism is a bad thing, but I'm saying in terms of the mindset and accepting differences and accepting respecting others' differences of opinion. I think that was very important. I think if I talk about number one thing which helped me from my knowledge, from my past experience of teaching, as you just said, is being broad, accepting diversity. That really helped me to navigate my not only the first few years of my migration, but also still now, as I am immersed with complex environments, complex communities, whether it's in my workplace or in my community work. I think that really helps me to cling on. Second, I would always also enforce that what has helped me, especially later stage of my life, is as you are being immersed in diverse communities, diverse workflows, and diversity overall, try to find out your core values. Try to identify what is the core value and the purpose of yourself. Like, look into yourself and try to identify your core value and try to align your activities, whether it's a short-term, long-term goals, to your core values. So this is something I have recently again relearned, I would say, as I'm doing an executive MBA in our personal leadership course. That is very important, that good leaders, good human beings always look into their core values. Try to identify your moral compass, core values, and try to align your surroundings, activities, especially the goals, with your core values. That's very, very important.
So we're coming to an end now. Just a couple more questions.
Yep.
What advice would you give to someone new to Australia who feels lost and a bit overwhelmed?
Yep, absolutely. I would give you 2 to 3, hopefully good advice. First of all, if I start with the number one is, it happened to me. I discussed it in earlier, that when we come to Australia, definitely there is confusion. There's an administration issue about how we're gonna be living, settling in Australia, and it's not only for Australia, for any country. However, for students in particular, and maybe young families, it's very important to have a settlement of your mind, of your family, and try to walk through the priorities of life. What I mean is, like, if someone coming from student to study, do your study, and definitely the administration and and those sort of visa processing will make their way. Some things are not within our hands, so having that understanding and appreciation that we cannot really change everything, and not everything we can control is very important fundamentally. I think that's a given, and especially trying to have that mindset to not overdo things or try to be very anxious of every single thing. I think that's very important. I'm particularly telling it to the student communities. Number 2 would be what really helped me, and I have seen a lot of again migrants, newly students, young families there. For them, they help them, is trying to look for people or communities who, number 2, who share your values. Try to be connected with your common values, not through a status, or not through just kids, or just career. Like maybe you work together in a place, and sometimes it can click that you become lifelong friends. But most likely, if you want to have a long-term relationship, which is important for newly migrants in Australia, because you are settling and you want to start a new life, try to mingle and connect with people with common values, common purpose. This is so important, because end of the day, when I look back to my journey in Australia, the people who I'm with now are the people who has the common values. So that's straightforward for me. So that's what I think. Like, it's very important to find common friends, families who we can be with, but try to have that understanding and look for that. So I think that's very important, which I can suggest to newly migrants. And thirdly, I would say Australia is a great place to live. There are definitely are challenges, cultural barriers. Multiculturalism is not something which is learned from countries where we are from. Like, we haven't really learned multiculturalism in back home in Bangladesh. That was something alien to us. So it's gonna be a bit of shock. However, Australia has a great, I would say, infrastructure, process, or mindset, and Australians, the people living in Australia, to adapt new cultures, adapt communities coming from overseas. So that's a benefit. That's a win-win situation. So if you start mingling with them, and they appreciate diversity, they recognize and they respect diversity, so that's going to be very helpful and supportive. So try to look for those opportunities. Yeah, so that's would be the number 3 suggestion for me. Yeah.
Okay, and just finally, what keeps you hopeful about the future of multicultural communities in Australia?
Okay, I think I kind of touched that. Look, I think I would just expand a bit more. I think Australia, if you look into also the studies, I don't know on top of my head now, but a lot of studies are there that Australia is one of the diverse and multicultural countries in the world. Not only just multicultural as a country, but also their ratings in terms of the way people rate Australia as multicultural country is very high. Now, why is that? Yeah, I'm not saying what's future, but I'm already saying the track record of Australia. Why is that? Because Australia has that support system. If I say in one word or one sentence, I could, being a migrant, being in community, being a person coming with family, coming from like an overseas country, I can say in these 15 years that I can see that Australia has that infrastructure, which might not be always visible, might not be, you can see that there is a poster saying, hey, multicultural community, come here, we're gonna help you resettle. So it's not really vivid, like it's not very clear in posters and banners in Australia. However, once you keep staying, once you do your studies, you work, you try to find communities, you meet with your local councillors, or you meet with your local community members, you're going to see there is bits and pieces of appreciation of diversity. So I think that has given me strength personally, and that has given me strength to grow, and that has given me this question, what you just asked, the optimism that if we can capitalize on this, we can definitely hope that Australia can be a better place for multicultural communities. Being said that, I appreciate and acknowledge that there are challenges, especially we know the geopolitical situation around the world is very tense. There is war happening in Middle East and other parts of the world, and definitely that brings certain uncertainties to certain communities and certain culture and religious communities. That's very understandable. However, we within these anomalies and differences and the situations what's happening globally, that definitely affects us heavily. However, we need to move forward with a positive attitude or positive mindset. I think that's really important. And I have seen within the root level communities in Australia, we're trying to help each other, support each other as much as we can. So I think that gives us hope. However, we just need to continue and keep that one final thing which I reiterate is acknowledge, appreciate, and have the respect and mutual trust, I would say, within the communities. I think that's key, and one of the definitely the key aspects of any human being, or the community to strive forward. Yeah.
So you seem to be fairly methodical and open-minded, and drew on your skills.
Absolutely, I think that's what that's in a nutshell. Having that open mindedness is very important. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think that wraps it up for today. I think there's a lot of gems in there. So I think if you're just moved here, if you listen to this, it would probably be a good experience for you. So thanks very much for that.
Thanks, Travis, for the interview. I think it was a nice chat. It was good to delve into a bit of bits and pieces from the past. But again, we hope we're gonna connect in another forum.
Good topic. Well done.
Thank you.